Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome to our 13th episode of girlstechtalk. So I'm Srima and I have Tara with me. So this episode we are going to talk about the container options that are available in Azure. So if you are a new developer and if you are starting with container, then this episode is going to help you. So if you see in the Microsoft offerings in the field of containers, there are many services that are available. So we have Azure Kubernetes service, and then Red Hat OpenShift, and then we have Azure Container Apps, and then Azure Functions, Web App for Azure, Web App for containers, and Container Instance. Then we have Service Fabric, and then Container Registry. And it's kind of confusing, like, which service is required to build and deploy. So if we see the container roadmap release from Microsoft, like in 2015, initially they released Azure Container Service. Then that has been deprecated by 2020, and now they have released Azure Container Apps. So Azure Container Apps and Azure Kubernetes Service, it looks like more of a similar, but there is a lot of difference between both the services. And Tara is going to discuss what are the difference we generally see. But if you just start with container, then I would say you should start with Azure Container Instance, because that's the, I would say, it works as a single pod. I mean, in general, I can say, and it's going to give you an virtualization of Windows or Linux OS. And you can start with container instance and try to understand what it is, and then scale it accordingly. And just a quick example, if you have seen Visual Studio Online, or maybe if you are working with Azure DevOps, both the product use Azure Container Instance. And however, Azure Kubernetes service that actually runs on, Xbox gaming system, they use this Azure Kubernetes system, Kubernetes service to run their infrastructure. So let's hear from Tara and about about the differences between all these three services.
Yeah, thanks, Shrima. That was good start. So, as Shrima said, there are multiple features or multiple offerings now which Azure is providing just for containerization of your application. But in today's episode, we are just going to talk about these three offerings, which is AKS, ACI, and ACA. And I have kept this slide just to give you that a brief comparison between these three. So, uh, as Seema said, earlier they had a different offering which got deprecated, and then in 2017, AKS comes into the picture, and ACI also came. So in 2017, AKS and ACI came as a generally available containerization offerings. So I'll start with AKS, and when you have your application, or when your organization has this application which is containing like lots and lots of services they have which communicate among each other, and along with that you want this full orchestration of these services to be done in containers, then in that case AKS is something which you should be using, because it provides you this Kubernetes API by which you can actually control over this whole cluster configuration, and it's your responsibility. It is going to be your responsibility for this whole orchestration maintenance. So in those kind of situation where your team is going to take control and responsibility of this cluster configuration operations, and you want this fully managed containerization with all the Kubernetes features, then AKS is something which you should be opting out. Obviously, AKS is the costliest one among all these, but considering the features which AKS provides, uh, it may happen that AKS is going to be the best suitable option. Uh, then comes ACI. As Seema said, it is something for a lightweight services to host on. So yeah, ACI is something which is just like it provides you as an offering of self-sufficient containers. So if you just want your application to get into containers in a simplest and fastest way, you don't have to worry about the inline infrastructure. You just want to deploy it in containers and let it run. In those kind of situation, ACI is something you can opt out. Or you can even like if you're starting with containerization and you want to see how things goes with your services, then you can start with it. But as Seema said, like it doesn't provide any of the Kubernetes features. Like it is not going to give you auto scaling. It is not going to give you any load balancing features. Even the default security features are not going to be there, which AKS provides. So if you have service like or a job like which doesn't communicate with external system a lot and it just runs or do the processing, then in those kind of situation, ACI is a good option. It's a cheaper and faster option. You just have to deploy it and you don't have to worry about anything else, the infrastructure or anything. Then the another thing is in situations where you sorry, where you know that you need this service to scale up or need more resources. In those kind of situation, you actually have to deploy it again with a new set of instances. So suppose you want 5 instances to be running, then you have to deploy it in 5 different ACI instances. So that is there. So it's like if your service is short-lived or if your service is just doing some internal processing, then in those situations, ACI is best and cheap and best option. Then comes the most discussed and kind of most confusing offering, which is Azure Container Apps. This has came on 2022 and it's respectively latest with respect to other offerings. So Azure came up with this feature just because it wanted to be something in between ACI and AKS. It's like it gives you features of Kubernetes, which is there like scale. It will be scaled based on event. It is going to be scaled based on weightage in the traffic. So that is going to be there. And but again, that Kubernetes API for orchestration is not going to get provided. So situations where you want some of the Kubernetes features to be available, but you don't want to again take care of the orchestration control and everything, or you just don't need it. In those kind of situation, container apps is a good option to pick up. So it's like when you know your application is it consists of several services, be it front end, back end, database, and these all communicate with each other. Then you should deploy all these to container apps because it eventually use Envoy services and Dapper is there, Keda is there. So all these container features are going to get utilized, as well as your cost is still going to get lower with respect to Kubernetes services. And then still you are going to use container features on this Azure providing offering. So in this situation where everything you want to be deployed in containers, and then it's like some of the services are long lived, but still you want to save some cost, in those kind of situation, container apps is a good option. So this is something on a very basic level comparison which we did, and maybe in our next episodes we'll go in depth comparison of all these services and different offerings. But for now, that's all we wanted to discuss. Shrima, you have anything which you want to share?
Just one liner. I think, like, if we have to start with Azure Container Instance, you need
Yeah.
more power, more scalability. Go for Azure Container Apps. And you need to manage the Kubernetes of the container apps, then AKS is the best option. But yeah, there is some powers of toolings that how do you orchestrate, how do you deploy. That also comes on configuring it. But it's the journey, that being a developer and containerization of the app. Yeah, I would just say limited to that. Our discussion is limited to that. So maybe next episode we will bring other features or other aspects of containerization of an application.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.